The night my wife told me she was leaving, she didn't cry. That was the first thing that told me everything was already over. She stood in our kitchen, arms crossed, phone face down on the counter like it was a shield. No shaking voice, no hesitation. Just a calm I hadn't seen in years. The kind of calm people get when they've rehearsed something so many times it stops feeling wrong. "I'm not happy," she said, "and I haven't been for a long time." I remember the hum of the refrigerator, the faint buzz of the ceiling light, small, ordinary sounds that suddenly felt louder than her words. I asked her if there was someone else. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I already knew the answer. You don't suddenly get this calm without somewhere safe to land. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been waiting for permission. Yes. She didn't say his name at first. She didn't have to. I'd seen it coming for months. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she talked about her job with a brightness she never used when she talked about us. "It's my boss," she finally said. "I didn't plan for it to happen like this." That line almost made me smile. Almost. She started explaining how he understood her, how he challenged her, how being with him made her feel seen. I nodded at the right moments, asked practical questions. When would she move out? How we'd handle the house, the dog. At some point, she stopped talking and looked at me, confused. "You're not angry," she said. "I am, just not in the way you expect." That bothered her more than yelling would have. She packed a suitcase that night. Not everything, just enough to feel decisive. Before she left, she looked around the kitchen like she was trying to memorize it. Like this place would become a story she'd tell later about the life she escaped. "You'll be okay," she said. "You're steady. You always land on your feet." Steady. That was her favorite word for me. The polite way of saying invisible. When the door closed, I didn't follow her. I didn't text. I didn't ask for another chance. I poured a glass of water and sat at the table until the sun came up. The next morning, her boss posted a photo on LinkedIn. A smiling couple at a rooftop restaurant, city lights behind them, his arm around her waist like it belonged there. The caption talked about new beginnings and exciting chapters. The post already had hundreds of likes. I stared at his face longer than I should have. Confident, relaxed. A man who believed the world rewarded him because he deserved it. I knew that face well. I'd been seeing it in Pix decks for 3 years. The divorce was quick. She wanted it clean. No drama. No digging. She waived spousal support like it was proof she'd leveled up. I didn't argue. I signed where my lawyer told me to sign. I let her keep the furniture she cared about, the art, the car. People praised her for being brave. People pitied me for being quiet. What no one asked was how her boss's company survived its first year, or the second, or why every time it ran out of money, another investor mysteriously stepped in with perfect timing. They didn't ask because the company looked legitimate, the numbers made sense, the growth curve was beautiful. That was my work. 3 years earlier, I'd met him by accident at a private demo night. He was pitching an idea he didn't fully understand yet to people who understood even less. I saw potential, not in him, in the structure, in what the company could become if someone smarter was pulling the strings. I never put my name on anything. I never sat on the board. I funneled money through a holding firm that existed solely to stay quiet. I rewrote strategy decks at 2 a.m. I killed bad hires before they happened. I kept the company alive while he took credit for saving it. When my wife got the job there, I didn't interfere. I didn't warn her. I didn't stop funding. I watched. I watched her confidence grow as his did. I watched how she started dressing like him, talking like him, looking at me like I was a phase she'd outgrown. Once she left, I didn't pull the money. Not yet. Because revenge isn't loud, and it isn't fast. It waits until everyone is comfortable. After she moved out, the silence in the house felt staged, like a set after the actors leave but the lights stay on. Her side of the closet was empty except for a single hanger she'd forgotten. The bathroom shelf still smelled like her shampoo. I didn't throw anything away. I didn't rush to erase her. I wanted the space to stay honest. People checked in the way they always do when they hear a marriage ended quietly. You holding up? Let me know if you need anything. She'll regret it. They all assumed I was licking my wounds, that I was processing loss. I wasn't. I was watching numbers. Her boss's company, his company, had just closed another funding round. Smaller than the last one, but enough to keep momentum alive. I recognized the structure immediately. Same pattern I'd used before. Same soft entry, same delayed control clauses hidden behind friendly language. He thought he was expanding his investor base. He wasn't. He was tightening it around himself. At night, I sat at my desk and reviewed reports like I always had. Revenue streams, burn rate, hiring velocity. He was overspending again. Too many flashy roles, too much ego, not enough infrastructure. The kind of mistakes people make when they start believing their own headlines. I corrected them. Quietly. 2 days after the divorce papers were finalized, my ex-wife posted another photo. This one was from his office. Glass walls, a skyline view, her hand holding a champagne flute. "Grateful to work with people who believe in me," the caption read. I noticed she'd tagged the company. She never used to tag anything. I wondered if she knew how thin the ice actually was beneath that glass floor. If she felt a tension in meetings, the kind that hides behind confident smiles. Or if she believed success was just something that happened when you chose the right man. She texted me once that week. Just one message. "I hope you're doing okay." No apology, no guilt. Just a clean sentence meant to close a door without slamming it. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I am. That was true. What she didn't know was that the company's biggest client was about to leave. Not dramatically, not with a lawsuit or an angry email, just a slow withdrawal, a contract allowed to expire without renewal. I'd set that up months earlier, as a contingency, a failsafe. At the time, it was just good risk management. Now, it was leverage. The client didn't even know my name. They trusted a consulting firm that trusted a holding group that trusted an intermediary that answered to me. Layers exist so no one asks who's really steering. I didn't pull the contract yet. I wanted to see how long he'd coast on confidence alone. A week later, she came by the house to pick up the last of her things. She knocked, even though she still had a key. She looked different. Not happier, sharper, more alert. Like someone who'd started performing for a new audience and hadn't stopped yet. "You don't have to be here," she said when she saw me. "I can come back later." "It's fine," I replied. She walked through the room slowly, narrating her choices. This lamp, those books, things she suddenly didn't need anymore. When she reached the office, she paused. "You're still working on your investments?" she asked. There it was. Casual curiosity. Not interest, just confirmation that I was still predictable. "Something like that," I said. She nodded, satisfied. In her mind, I was frozen in place, safe, static, someone she could explain away to her new life without discomfort. At the door, she hesitated. "He's really good at what he does. You know that, right?" I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. "I know." That night, her boss sent out an internal email, celebratory, motivational, talking about growth, expansion, the future. He used words like unstoppable and inevitable. I read it twice. Then I logged into a system he didn't know existed and approved a delay. Nothing dramatic, just a pause. A minor procedural hiccup that would cost him time. Time meant money. Money meant questions. He wouldn't panic yet. Not until the second delay. Revenge doesn't begin with impact. It begins with imbalance. I first met her boss in a room full of people who wanted to look smarter than they were. Private demo night, bad wine, overconfident founders talking about disruption like it was a personality trait. I wasn't there to invest. I was there because I enjoy watching people reveal what they don't understand. He stood out immediately. Not because he was brilliant, because he was loud in a polished way. The kind of confidence that comes from never having been seriously challenged. He spoke fast, smiled on cue, and waved away hard questions with charm instead of answers. His idea wasn't new. It wasn't even refined. But the structure underneath it? That was interesting. Flawed, fragile, but interesting. After his pitch, I waited until the crowd thinned. Your margins won't survive scale, I said casually, like I was commenting on the weather. He laughed. Everyone says that. Everyone is right, I replied, but it's fixable. That was all it took. Men like him don't hear warnings, they hear opportunities to win. We talked for 20 minutes. I asked questions he couldn't answer and watched how he reacted. No defensiveness, no curiosity either. Just trust that someone else would handle it. Perfect. I didn't offer money that night. I offered a conversation later. He followed up within the hour. The first transfer came through a holding company with no name worth remembering. Not enough to attract attention, just enough to keep him alive through a rough quarter. He thought it was luck, or validation. By the second year, I was no longer saving the company. I was designing it. I never told him to do things directly. I suggested, introduced, connected him with people who might help. Consultants who answered to me, legal teams that used my templates, investors who never spoke in meetings but always voted the right way. He became the face. I became gravity. When my wife told me she'd been promoted and casually mentioned his name, I felt something then. Not jealousy, recognition. I asked what he was like. Driven, she said. Visionary, intense in a good way. I nodded. I didn't tell her that every visionary moment she admired had been stress-tested, softened, and approved hours earlier by someone she'd eaten dinner with for years. I didn't tell her that the company only hired her because I'd quietly flagged her resume as low-risk, high-loyalty. I let her believe it was coincidence. The first time I saw them together was at a company event. I stood near the back, unnoticed, while he spoke on stage. She watched him like the future was speaking directly to her. He spotted me in the crowd and waved, introduced me as one of our early supporters. She smiled at me, surprised, proud. That was the night something in her shifted, not toward him, away from me. Over the next year, the company grew fast, too fast. I slowed it where I could, redirected pressure, covered mistakes. He took credit publicly and panicked privately. Whenever he panicked, I calmed the system. Whenever the system stabilized, he mistook it for his own resilience. By the time she left me, he believed he was self-made. That belief is expensive. The quarter after our divorce, the company missed its targets for 18 months. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to spook the board. He blamed market conditions. The board agreed. I didn't correct them. Instead, I adjusted the forecast models he relied on. Subtle changes, assumptions that still looked reasonable, just optimistic enough to push decisions a little too far. He approved an expansion he couldn't afford. She celebrated the news. I watched the burn rate climb. Then I scheduled a second delay. This one wasn't procedural, it was structural. A vendor changed terms, a timeline slipped. Legal had questions that suddenly couldn't be rushed. He called me for the first time in months. Hey, he said, voice lighter than it should have been. Everything good on your end? It depends. How much room do you think you have? He laughed, too quickly. Plenty. I looked at the numbers on my screen. He had 6 months, maybe less. I ended the call politely, promised to check in soon. That night, my ex-wife posted another picture, this time from a balcony, city below, his hand visible at the edge of the frame. Someone commented, power couple. I closed the app and went back to work, because power only looks like confidence from the outside. From where I was sitting, it already looked like strain. She started noticing the cracks before she admitted they were there. At first, it was small things, meetings that ran long without decisions, calls he took in other rooms, the way his confidence sharpened into control when things didn't go exactly right. She mentioned that once, casually, when we crossed paths at a mutual friend's birthday. He's under a lot of pressure, she said, like she was explaining away a storm. Big growth always comes with friction. I nodded. I didn't tell her the friction was intentional. Inside the company, tension had become the default state. Cash flow was tighter than reported. The expansion he'd approved was bleeding quietly, the way smart problems do. Nothing exploded, nothing screamed, it just demanded attention every day. And attention is expensive. He started micromanaging, rewriting emails before they were sent, sitting in on calls he used to delegate, questioning numbers he didn't fully understand but didn't trust anymore. People noticed. So did she. She stayed late more often, trying to prove something. Loyalty, value, maybe to him, maybe to herself. When she talked about work now, the brightness was gone, replaced by urgency. He needs people he can rely on, she said once. Everyone's so sensitive lately. I almost asked if she meant him. Instead, I asked how she was sleeping. She waved it off. At night, I made another adjustment. This one was elegant. No delays, no resistance. Just the removal of a safety net he didn't know existed. A credit line that had never been used, but always reassured investors that liquidity was available if needed. It disappeared from the model. The next board call was tense. I listened in silence as he defended projections that no longer held. He spoke faster, interrupted more. When someone questioned his assumptions, he took it personally. I heard my ex-wife speak up once, cautious, measured, trying to steady him. He cut her off. "Let's stay focused," he said. "This isn't a time for hypotheticals." The room went quiet. After the call, she messaged me. Out of nowhere. Did he always have this temper? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Yes, I typed. Then deleted it. No, I sent instead. Not always. She didn't reply. 2 weeks later, the first investor asked for a clarification. Not concern, just clarification. A polite request for updated numbers. The kind that sounds harmless but shifts the air in a room. He overcorrected. Pushed harder, promised more, committed to timelines that required miracles. I watched him build pressure on top of pressure and wondered how long before he blamed someone else. It didn't take long. She came home late one night and found him still on his laptop, jaw tight, eyes red. He thinks someone's undermining him, she told a friend on the phone. I heard it because she didn't know I was in the room. He won't say who, but he's convinced it's internal. I smiled to myself. The best part was that nothing I was doing looked personal. It looked like market forces, like bad luck, like the kind of resistance every growing company claims to face. He started talking about trust. Who deserved it, who didn't. She started feeling watched. Her access changed, subtle. Permissions shifted. Meetings she used to attend suddenly didn't require her input. She noticed. You ever feel like you're being tested? She asked me once when we spoke again to finalize a paperwork detail. All the time, I said. She nodded slowly, like that confirmed something she hadn't wanted to admit. That same week, I approved the cancellation of a renewal. No announcement, no explanation, just a clean exit from a partnership that had propped them up quietly for years. The impact wouldn't be immediate. It would arrive like realization does. Gradual, unavoidable. He sent out another internal email, less celebratory this time, more demanding. Words like accountability and alignment replaced unstoppable and inevitable. People forwarded it to each other without comment. She didn't like who he was becoming, and he didn't like that she noticed. When pressure finally breaks something, it never breaks the thing you expect. It revealed what was already there. The first real hit didn't look like a hit at all. No alarms, no emergency meetings, just an email marked update that landed in his inbox early one day morning. A client they'd worked with for years wouldn't be renewing. They cited strategic realignment and thanked him for the partnership. He read it twice before forwarding it to legal with a single line. Confirm this isn't an error. It wasn't. Losing that client created a gap. Not a hole, a gap. The kind that forces you to reshuffle projections, delay hires, explain things you'd rather not explain. He told the team it was temporary. He told the board it was expected. He told her it didn't matter. None of that was true. The company started running on tension instead of momentum. Meetings became shorter and sharper. Decisions were made faster but worse. He stopped asking questions and started issuing directives. When numbers don't obey, ego fills the space. She felt it first in how he spoke to her. Not cruel, not openly, just dismissive in a way that suggested he no longer needed her approval or her presence. She was useful when things were expanding. Now he wanted control. She came to me unexpectedly one evening, saying she needed to grab a document she'd left behind months ago. An excuse thin enough to be honest. "You seem calm," she said, standing in the doorway. "I am." She hesitated, then asked, "Did you ever regret not pushing harder in your career?" There it was. The question people ask when the story they chose starts cracking. "No," I said. "I just chose where to apply pressure." She didn't understand that. Not yet. At the office, he was unraveling in private, demanding updated reports twice a day, questioning expenses he'd approved himself, blaming departments for problems rooted in his own impatience. Someone quit. Then another. He called me again. This time, his voice wasn't light. "We're seeing some unexpected resistance," he said. "I just want to make sure we're aligned." "Aligned on what?" I asked. "Our trajectory." I looked at the latest figures. "Your trajectory depends on decisions you already made. Alignment won't change that." Silence. He finally said, "I thought you believed in this company." "I do," I answered. "I just don't confuse belief with immunity." He didn't like that. Neither did she when she heard how he spoke about people who lost faith. The way he lumped loyalty and usefulness together like they were the same thing. One night, she watched him snap at someone on a call and realized she'd started flinching before he spoke. That's when doubt becomes physical. The second hit came quietly. An investor delayed a follow-on commitment. No withdrawal, just a pause. A request to wait for more clarity next quarter. The board stopped using words like growth and started using words like runway. He started sleeping less, drinking more, watching everyone. She asked him directly if something was wrong. He told her she was being dramatic. That was the moment she stopped defending him. I watched all of it from a distance that felt surgical. Every move measured, every consequence timed. I didn't enjoy it. That surprised me. What I felt was precision. Because when you remove the support someone never knew they had, you don't destroy them. You let them show you who they are without it. And he was showing everyone. Especially her. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It came in fragments. A name she heard twice in 1 week. A document she wasn't supposed to see but did. A meeting invite that included people she'd never been introduced to, discussing decisions that affected her department without mentioning her once. She started paying attention. Not emotionally, strategically. One night, while he was in the shower, his laptop buzzed on the nightstand. She didn't intend to look, that's what she told herself later, but the notification preview was enough to pull her in. An email thread. Short. Clinical. No praise, no deference. Just leverage. The sender wasn't a VC firm she recognized, not a partner she'd met. Just a holding group with a neutral name and an authority in its tone that made her uneasy. She scrolled. Mentions of revised terms, conditional support, dependencies she'd never seen documented before. The language wasn't threatening. It didn't need to be. It assumed compliance. She closed the laptop when she heard the water shut off. But something had shifted. The next day, she searched the company records, quietly, through channels she still had access to. She followed the trail backward, expecting to find a powerful investor she'd somehow missed. Instead, she found layers, entities inside entities, shells that led nowhere obvious, money that appeared, moved, stabilized, and vanished without ever showing its face. One name appeared repeatedly as a reference point, not public, not official, just initials. On a legal document she didn't understand fully, but understood enough. My initials. She told herself it was coincidence. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to believe that the man she left because he was too small had been standing behind everything she'd stepped into. She confronted him that night. Not directly. Carefully. "Who are your earliest backers?" she asked, trying to sound curious, not suspicious. He didn't look up from his phone. "Why?" I'm just trying to understand the structure better. They're not important, he said. They trust me. That's what matters. She watched his jaw tighten when he said it. She pressed once more. But who are they? He snapped. Why are you suddenly interrogating me? That was her answer. The next week, the third hit landed. This one couldn't be explained away. A key partnership dissolved with formal notice, legal language, no room for negotiation. The kind of letter that signals a decision made long before it's delivered. The board demanded answers. He didn't have them. For the first time, someone said the word exposure out loud. That night, she came to my house. Not unannounced, she texted first. We need to talk. When she arrived, she didn't sit. She stood in the middle of the living room like the space itself might accuse her. Are you involved? She asked. I didn't pretend not to understand. Yes, I said. Her breath caught. How? Completely. She stared at me like she was seeing depth for the first time and realizing how far down it went. You funded him, she said. Not a question. I built the foundation he's standing on. Her voice shook. Why didn't you ever tell me? I looked at her carefully. You never asked. You told me who I was. She sat down then. Hard. Everything rearranged itself behind her eyes. Every memory. Every comparison. Every time she'd looked at me with disappointment while praising someone else for the same qualities she'd dismissed. He doesn't know, she whispered. No, and he never bothered to find out. Silence filled the room. Then, quietly, is this revenge? I considered the question. No, I replied. This is gravity. She understood what that meant when her phone buzzed moments later. A message from him. Short. Panicked. Something's wrong. I need you here. She looked at me like she wanted to go back in time. But time doesn't move that way. I opened the door for her. Not to invite her back, to let her leave. She went back to him that night. Not because she believed in him again, because walking away in the middle of collapse feels like murder, and she wasn't ready to own that yet. He was pacing when she arrived, phone in his hand, jacket still on. The apartment felt smaller than it used to, like the walls had leaned in. They're pulling out, he said before she could speak. Not everyone, but enough to make things complicated. She watched him closely now. The man who once felt inevitable looked brittle. His certainty had cracks, and through them leaked something ugly. Who? She asked. He waved it off. It doesn't matter. I'll fix it. You don't sound like you know how. That stopped him. He turned, eyes sharp. What's that supposed to mean? She chose her words carefully. It means you keep saying things will work out, but you don't explain how. You don't explain anything anymore. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Since when do I owe you a breakdown of investor dynamics? Since they're asking questions about me, about my access, my role, about who I talk to. His face changed. Not fear, calculation. Who have you talked to? He asked. No one, she said, but I've seen things. What things? She hesitated just long enough for him to know the answer mattered. Names, entities, money that doesn't behave the way you said it did. He stared at her, searching for the right response. Then he smiled. A mistake. You're tired. This pressure is getting to you. That was the moment she realized he would sacrifice her without blinking if it meant saving himself. The next morning, the board called an emergency meeting. This time, no optimism, no narrative, just survival. I joined silently, camera off, audio muted. I listened as he tried to reassert control, tried to sound authoritative while every question chipped away at him. Someone finally asked it. Who actually controls the majority position? He spoke my name. Not confidently, not clearly, like a guess. The room went quiet. I turned my camera on. He froze when he saw me. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence do its work. Let everyone feel the weight of uncertainty he'd been hiding behind charm. I do, I said finally, through entities disclosed in your documents. The board members shifted. Papers rustled. No one interrupted me. I've been funding this company since its second quarter. I've structured its growth, absorbed its risk, and corrected its mistakes. I looked directly at him. You were never self-made. He tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. You can't do this. This is retaliation. No, this is consequence. One board member asked the question that mattered. What happens now? I answered without hesitation. Support continues under revised leadership, or it ends. He looked around the room, waiting for someone to defend him. No one did. She was watching from the hallway outside the conference room, phone pressed to her ear. She heard enough to understand everything. When the call ended, he didn't look at her. He packed his bag in silence. Anger radiated off him, but it had nowhere to go. You knew, didn't you? She didn't answer, because the truth was worse than accusation. She hadn't known. She assumed. That night, she came to me again. This time, she sat. I made a mistake, she said. I didn't correct her. I thought strength looked a certain way. I thought I chose better. You chose louder. That's common. She swallowed. Is there any way back? I stood up and walked to the door. Not angrily, not dramatically. Just finished. Some doors don't close. They disappear. She nodded. Tears didn't help her now. Neither did regret. Behind her, his company was unraveling without him. Ahead of her, nothing was familiar anymore. She left quietly. I didn't watch her go. The fallout was quieter than people expect when they imagine collapse. No headlines, no dramatic resignations on social media, just a press release about strategic restructuring and a new interim CEO with a resume that reassured markets. The stock stabilized. The company survived. He didn't. His name disappeared first from emails, then from conversations. His access was revoked with polite language and irreversible clicks. The board thanked him for his vision and asked him to return company property by the end of the week. He sent me one message. Long, angry, accusatory. He called me vindictive, claimed I'd planned everything from the beginning, that I'd stolen his life. I didn't reply, because explaining requires respect, and I had none left for him. A month later, my ex-wife reached out again. Not to come back, to understand. We met in a quiet cafe she used to like. No tension this time, just distance that had settled into place naturally. I keep replaying everything, she said, looking for the moment I missed who you really were. You didn't miss it, I replied. You decided it didn't matter. She nodded slowly. That hurt more than denial ever could. She says you destroyed him, she said, that you waited until you could take everything. I removed what wasn't his, I answered. There's a difference. She wrapped her hands around her cup, staring into it like it might answer for me. Were you ever going to tell me? She asked. I thought about that honestly. No, I said. Not unless you'd asked without already leaving. She flinched, not because it was cruel, because it was true. She told me she was moving. New city, new job, somewhere no one knew the story. I wished her well, and meant it. After that, life simplified. I stepped back from the company once the transition was complete, sold my position quietly, let someone else enjoy the stability I'd built. I didn't need the spotlight. I never had. People assume revenge ends with satisfaction. It doesn't. It ends with closure. One evening, months later, I passed a bar and saw him inside through the window. Older somehow. Smaller. Talking too loudly to someone who wasn't listening. For a moment, I felt something close to pity. Then it passed. He'd mistaken access for ownership, volume for authority, applause for power. She'd mistaken quiet for weakness. Both of them learned the same lesson from different sides of the fall. I went home, poured a glass of water, and sat in silence that finally felt earned. No one clapped. No one needed to.